Hi, in tonight's Unity tutorial, I am going to try to explain how I get a car to follow a path along my terrain. And I'm working on this because I'm trying to make a racing game and I want the other cars that aren't me to be able to drive around the track. So what I did here is I have some checkpoints, these little yellow dots, and each checkpoint has a wall, see? And as the car passes through the walls, it starts aiming itself at the next checkpoint. So let's see how we did this. And to go through it with you, I'm just going to start again from scratch with a new Unity project. So I'll just take this one out of the way and I'll just start a new Unity project with the Unity Hub. Open that up. And we'll call this one the AI Car Tutorial. Okay, and it's going to be a 3D project. And I'll say create project. Okay, so I have a new 3D project here, and I'll save my scene that's opened up here as scene 1. Okay, and I'll just get rid of that. And I'm just going to clean up the packages I don't need. So I'm going to go to Window Package Manager, and I'll get rid of the packages I don't need. So I removed almost everything. There's one more here, Text Mesh Pro, remove that one. And then I'm going to reference you here to Package Manager, which is this thing itself. I'll remove. So Package Manager here has this little icon saying that I don't have the latest version, I think, right? So I could pick a version, and then that's not the right thing. I could pick a version from Package Manager 2.07 is the latest version, and I'm at 2.03, so I could update that. And anyway, those things don't have to do with the tutorial. I just wanted to clean up my project with just having the stuff that I need. Okay, now that's up to date. All right, so first things first is I have to add a terrain in here, something to drive on. I'm going to make my track, and I'll just use a terrain. And the terrain by default has a size of 500, but you know, that's kind of big for this tutorial. So I'm just going to shrink it down to 200 by 200 with a height of 100. And this baking is going to continue to happen because the terrain right now is static. So for me to work with the editor, I'm just going to turn off the static terrain so that the baking doesn't keep happening. And now for the position of the terrain, if you see here, is the corner is 0, 0, 0, and then it moves forward from there. But I want the center of the terrain to be at 0, 0, 0, and the size of my terrain is 200 by 200. So I'll just move it back by 100 on the X and 100 on the Y, on the Z, which will give me a center of the screen right there, the center of my terrain. The next thing I want is texture for the terrain, so it's not all white, because when it's all white, it's kind of hard to see anything. So let me just look up something online. Terrain texture. Okay, and go to images here, and then I'll just pick something to use for my terrain texture. I'll pick, ooh, that's big. I'll just pick this one. Okay, so then I'll save it to my desktop there, and I'll call it terrain. Okay, then I don't need that anymore. Let me just move this over, drag this into my project, and now for the terrain, I'm going to give it some, I go to the paintbrush tool right here, and I go to the paint texture, and then I edit a new terrain layer. I create a new layer using that texture, and now that texture is over my whole terrain. And now I'm just going to raise the terrain up to, give it some height and bumpiness. So I'll pick a shape here, put the opacity low so it doesn't really make a big effect, not terribly big effect. And now I'll just give my terrain some depth, some hills and stuff by going from paint texture to razor lower terrain. Okay. And now, as you can see, the terrain's raising or lowering there based on the setting. And I'm just doing this so there's something to look at in my scene as I'm driving around in it. So I just want a little bit of bumps, okay? Now to do the road, whatever the part is that's going to be the road, I'm going to use the set height command, and I'll pick like sphere shape here, and let's see, the width of the road would be about 20, okay? And I'll just like I'll map out a road here by dragging it through. It looks like the height here is going to be set to flatten it to 0. Let me just give that a lot of power to flatten to 0. And now I will just drag out a road, keeping in mind that Z, this is the forward. So I guess I'll just start here and I'll drag out a road. Examples of each kind of curve so that I can make sure that my AI car algorithm works well. Okay, so now I kind of have a road dragged out. And now let me put in a sample. Oops, over here there's still a bump there. Okay, so basically all the road where the car is going to drive is flat. All right, now let me just put my sample car in here. Then I'm going to use a cube right now for a car. And to give it to the shape of a car, I'll make it 2 wide and 3 long. And the height, I'll just reduce it to like 5. So this little block here is going to represent my car, but let's put it over on the road. So I'm just going to move it over here to the road. Okay. So now if I double click on it, let's see how this looks. Let me call this the AI car. AI car. Okay. So we have our terrain, which is going to be the track, and we have the car. And let's just pick the car up above the ground. And then also the car, we're going to, yes, it does have a collider, so it can interact with the track, and we're going to have to add a rigid body to it. Okay. And let's say that the weight of the car is about 1,400 pounds. Let's say that. And then we'll give it some drag so it's just not like on ice. So I'll give it a drag of like 1.5. And the angular drag will be like if it hits something that it just doesn't go spinning off like it's in space and asteroid. So just give it something like 10. Okay. So now we got the car, has rigid body, blah, 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 blah. And we have a track. And if I press play, the car should just drop and land on the track. There it goes. All right. So the first thing, now that we have a car and we have a track, the next thing I want to do is start to outline some dots or some points along the track. I want to like actually define some points along the track. Sorry, this is OCD. So I'm going to pick my terrain, which I'm going to make a child object of the terrain, create empty, and I'll call it my checkpoints. So I'm going to make an array of checkpoints that say the path along the track. And that way my car could actually have something to follow. All right. So I have my checkpoints, and I want to add a first checkpoint over here. So the object that's going to be a checkpoint, let me make one of those objects here by creating a, let's see, I'll go in here and create a quad. All right. And the quad, where did it come out? Oh, it comes out way over here. Let's take that quad and move it into a position so I could like play with it. All right, so drag that over here, like so that the first one's there. And now let me zoom in on it. All right, so you can see the quad's like a wall. It's facing forward. All right, and I'm gonna give this quad a name. I'm gonna call it wall 0. Okay, it's gonna be my first checkpoint, and I'm giving it the number because I'm gonna start making copies of it, and every copy is gonna be incrementing the 0 from 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is my first checkpoint, and I'll give it an icon also. So I'm gonna go here, and the icon will be like a little yellow dot. Okay, and that way I could see the wall, the little checkpoints when I zoom out here as I start putting them down. So let's turn that like this. That way the icon always shows a 3D icon. All right, so this is wall. The collider for the quad, I want to make it convex, and I want to make it a trigger. I don't want the car to actually collide into the wall. I just want a trigger to happen so that when the car touches the wall, I know. All right. So the difference is if I didn't click this is trigger, then when the car drives and hits the wall, it wouldn't be able to go through the wall. But if I make it a trigger, the car will hit the wall. I'll get the event, but the car could go through the wall. All right. So that's the wall, a little bit of a wall. Now I'm just gonna like outline a bunch of dots along the whole screen. So let's take this first wall and make it into a prefab. All right. Then I'll select the wall again and press Control D. And every time I press Control D, I'll just move some dots forward. All right. Kind of outlining a path throughout this track. And I'll just put enough points in there so that I know when I'm turning that the car could follow the dots. Okay. Now before I even finish doing all my dots, you'll notice that in the demo that I did at the start of the tutorial, the dots were connected. So that's done with a script. And the script that I did that with, let me erase that. The script that I did that with is a script that I added to the parent of all these wall objects here, the checkpoints. So let me add a script here. And what the script is going to do is going to use, it's just going to draw the dots and do the wall for us. So I'll name this script checkpoints. Okay. And then I'll open it up in Visual Studio. And this is what's there. I'm just going to replace that all with the script that I prepared. Boom. With this code here. Okay. And let me just go over it. I'm using the Unity engine. And then here's my class checkpoints to match the name of the script file. It's a mono behavior. And I don't have to worry about the loop thing. I'm going to have a variable here that says the wall size. So, right now, if we were to zoom in and look at one of these walls here, you're going to see the wall is like a little square. But we'd want the wall to cover the space of the whole track. So that's why in my checkpoint script, I'm going to have a variable for the wall size. And then onDraw Gizmos is going to draw the walls in for us like I did in the demo. It's going to draw these lines and the walls for us. So that's what, oops, sorry about that. That's what I'm going to use the onDraw Gizmos function for. Okay. So right here, just make sure that we do have some child objects. These transform child count. This is the checkpoint transform, and these are the children of that transform. So if there is a count of less than 2, then I don't have enough points to draw a line between 2 points. So I just return. Otherwise, I come in here and I loop through all the points up to the second to last one, and I draw yellow lines between them. And then on the last one, from 6 to 0, I'll draw a red line so we could tell like where the loop starts. Okay, so onDraw Gizmos will do that for us. And I think, yep, we could see it already happening since the script is here and it compiled the checkpoint script. The on-drawer gizmos is drawing a yellow line between everything, and then when it gets to the last point, it draws a red line from 6 and goes back to 0. And now this other function is a public function because we're going to call it from some other script. But this function is going to go through all the little walls that are here on each of these checkpoints. They're little right now. And it's going to take the size of the wall that we say here. Let me see what's going on because I took loop out. Let me just see what's up. Let me save it, and then loop should be gone when the script finishes reading. Good, so we have a wall. So as we can see here, the red is the X, that's the width. So if this is 1, then I imagine maybe the width from side to side, maybe that's something like 10. And then the height of the wall is the Y. So we want to make sure the car doesn't jump over the wall, so we'll just give the height maybe like a 5, okay? So we're setting the size of the wall to be 10 by 5. And then in this next script, in the script checkpoints, this next function, angle size checkpoint walls, I have to go every 3 checkpoints, the current checkpoint, the next, and the previous, okay? So I'm going to loop through, again, all my walls, all my transforms that are children of checkpoints. And the wall that I'm currently on is I. Okay, and then I have a little function to get the next checkpoint after I, which would be I plus 1. Unless I'm over here at 6, then I plus 1 would be out of range. I would be 0. So that's how come there's a little function here to figure that out. See? It's I plus 1, unless I'm at the last transform child, then it's 0. And then the same thing with previous. I figure out what the index of the previous checkpoint would be from I with the same kind of thing. If I'm at 0, then the previous checkpoint would loop around and be 6. Okay, so that's the next and the previous. Now I get a pointer to the transform for the current checkpoint. Let's get child at I. The next checkpoint is get child at next, which is I plus 1, and previous, which is like I minus 1. Okay, so now I got a pointer to each of the wall objects, 3 of them. Then I set the size of the wall, the current checkpoint, whatever it is. If I'm like 1, then the size of the wall, I'll set it to that size that I said in the inspector. Okay, so that's the wall size. And now I want to angle the wall because as you see, as you're going around the track, all the walls aren't actually going to be facing the same way. The walls are going to have to turn as you turn around the track. So here we're going to have the angles figured out automatically for us. So my thought is, say if this wall here is going to be halfway between this wall and this wall's angle, okay? So I get I have my current checkpoint look at the next checkpoint, and I have my current checkpoint look at the previous checkpoint. And between those 2 angles is the average, right? It's halfway, 0.05 between the current and the previous, and that's going to be the rotation of my wall. Okay, what else did I have here? Oh, I just had the next, the previous, and a description. So let's see, right now in the script, nothing's calling angle checkpoint walls, but this is a public function. So I'm going to show you another thing here. In my checkpoint script, I'm going to add a button here that after I place my points when I'm editing, that I'll press the button and then I'll do the wall and the lines and angle everything for me. So to do that, I'm going to have to make another script called an editor script for this checkpoint script. So the editor scripts have to be in a folder called editor. So in my assets folder, I make a folder called editor, and then in there, I'm going to create a script. Okay. Now, since this is going to be an editor script for my checkpoints script, I'm going to call it checkpoints editor. And that's just my choice. So I could figure out what this is for. Now, when I open up the editor script, it starts off just being a regular model behavior script. But I could use something else called the Unity editor. Okay, and I'm not going to need those two. And then I could derive off of Unity editor instead of model behavior. Am I correct there? Yeah, I think so. I come off of, no, not Unity editor, it's just editor. That's why it was, there we go, it turned green. Okay, so now this is an editor script. The only thing it needs to know is I have to kind of give a little definition here. Custom editor, right? Because I'm going to customize what shows in the editor here in the inspector window. So this is a custom editor, and it's going to be for type of checkpoint script. Checkpoints script. Okay, so this is the name of the script right here, checkpoints, and that means that this editor script is going to work on any time I use the checkpoint script. So what is it going to do? What do I want it to do? Well, I want to override. I want to have this editor script draw what already is there, but I also want it to add something else. So here's my checkpoint script, and these things are the default things that are drawing right now, but I want to add a button to press. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to go and do an override of the onInspector GUI function. Override void on, there it is, onInspector GUI. Double click. Okay. So I want to override the normal functionality. But I think I got a little red squiggly there. I got to put another bracket. There you go. See, 1, 2, 1, 2. So here's the onInspector GUI function. And this says that do what the onInspector GUI function would normally do by calling base.onInspector GUI. You do what it would normally do. It would draw those things there. And then add some more commands here to do more stuff. So this editor is for the checkpoint script. How do I get a pointer to the checkpoint script? The pointer to the checkpoint script is actually the target variable. That's a member of editor. It's a variable called target. So all I have to do is type the target to be a checkpoint type, and now I have a pointer to the checkpoint script. Okay. I want my button to be a different color, so I'm going to say GUI dot background color equals color yellow. All right, that means the next thing I draw in the GUI is going to be color yellow. And now I'm going to draw the thing in the GUI. So this is an if statement. If GUI layout dot button, and what's going to show on that button is angle and size checkpoint. That would be nice to spell correctly. Checkpoint walls. Okay, that's what's going to show on the button. And this command actually makes the button, and this says what's going to show on the button. Now I say that if the button is pressed, if the thing equals true, then what do I do? All right, so in these brackets, I'm going to say what to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the function in my checkpoint thing. I'm going to call this function here, angle size checkpoint walls. So here I'll say script dot, and it should show up here in the list, angle checkpoint walls. So I call that function. That's great. So this will make a button, and that'll show the checkpoint walls. Let me save it and make sure that that's happening now. So the script's read, and it didn't work. Oh, there it goes. Now it worked. It just had to refresh itself. So now here's a button, and it's color yellow, just like I expected. Okay, and if I press the button, there you go. The walls get made, and they get sized to the command. Well, now I can see what the size is. I see that 10 is not big enough, so I'm going to do 20. And I'm going to make the wall size 20. And then I'll say, boom. And something's wrong. It looks like I have my Z, which is the forward and back, and you see how the collider is getting fatter. That's the wrong axis. What I really want is Y for the height. Let me say 10. Now let's say angle and size, and boom. Okay, so you can see that these walls here, they're going through, and the angle of this wall is pointing right toward the next wall. All right, if I'm at wall number 2, you see that it's pointing toward that wall and this wall, and that's done great. So the function's working, and the one that's kind of weird though is this last wall and this wall. I don't think that there's a wall on this last point, but you know, we're not finished, so let's see what we got. In the editor script for when you have the checkpoints, I think it'd also be nice to tell me how many points I have in my checkpoint list. So that's why I had this function here called description, and the description tells me how many walls there are, child count. So if I want to display that in my editor, I'm just going to go back to the editor script here, and this did the button. Now I'm going to do a thing called GUI layout.label. Okay, and for the label, I just want it to show the text from description, from my script.description. And that's a function. Boom, boom. No red squigglies. Good. So save that. Let me see if that works. And then I can tell how many points I got. And right now there's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And oh yeah, 7 does have a wall. See, each of them does have a wall. There you go. But these two are trying to point to each other, and it's really odd. So now I'm just going to finish putting in all the dots. So I select the dot, I press Control D to make a copy, and then I move that copy. Select it, Control D, and move. Control D, and move. Control D, and move. And I'm spacing them, you know, somewhat apart. Move. Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D. And this track is really good. It's going to really test our AI car algorithm because it has curves in 2 different directions, and it has tight curves, and it has some loose curves. So if the car could drive around this, it probably should work on any track that we're going to make for our game. And now you can see that this red dot, it's pointing back to the first one. Maybe I'll add one more there. There you go. So now we have it. The walls are not facing the right way, but that's okay because in our checkpoint script, I just had to press this button. Bam, bam. There we go. And now the walls should all be facing nicely, fitting into the track. So you notice the height of the walls I set to 10, but since the center of each wall is really just a point on the ground, when I say 10, it goes 5 up and 5 below. And that's okay, I don't really care. I'll leave it like that. So, let me empty my recycle bin. Let me go back here. So we did the checkpoint script that draws the line between the checkpoints. And the checkpoint script also, we wrote a function to angle the walls for us. And then we made an editor script for the checkpoint script that shows this button here in the inspector window and shows this label. So what do we do next? Now we're going to play around with the car and try to get the car to move forward and follow these points. So we're going to have a new script. I select the car and I add a component. I'm going to add a new script. This new script I'm going to call AI car. Okay, and now let's go to the script for AI car. Double clicking on it, and here we go. And this is what we're going to type in for the AI car script. All right, so I only need to use the Unity engine, and the AI car script is derived off of mono behavior, so this is a regular script. So up here at the top, I have a structure that I made, which is just a set of variables, okay, for holding the information that I'm going to use to move the car. So I'll hold a pointer to the checkpoints object, It's a pointer to the transformer checkpoints from my track. So that way I could tell, what all the walls are. I need something to reference that. So I got to transform to this checkpoints object. And then I have the index of whatever the current checkpoint my car is going to point to. And then I have this here for calculating the car to turn to the next checkpoint. I have the direction steer, the direction I want to get to, and how much I rotate, the rotation steer. Anyway, so this is a structure for my AI information to control my car. Then over here I have a public float. This is the move speed, how fast the car is going to move. This is the turn speed, how fast the car is going to turn, and it's kind of like a number between 0 and 1, all right? Then I have the rigid body pointer and rend, which I don't know if I'm using it yet, but yeah, rend. And then struct AI. So here it's just a nice struct AI, and AI has all these little sub members. So in the start, I get the rigid body of my AI car. So let's look at my AI car. My AI car is this block over here. Hello. Let me move you up here. It's this block, right? So there's the block, and it has a rigid body. So that's how we have the physics. We're going to move it around by pushing it with physics. And the renderer, it's whatever draws the car. So right here, this is the renderer. It's a mesh renderer that draws the car. And when it draws it, I'm going to use the renderer to determine where the center of the car is. But actually in this script, we don't need it yet. So I'm going to take it out. We're not at that level yet. We just need the rigid body. Now the checkpoints for the AI, I need to point it to this object. Okay, so let's do some things so I could find objects that are in my scene. The wall objects, the checkpoint object, they all mean something to me, but I don't want to have to depend on the name. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a tag. So I'm going to pick the checkpoints object and I'm going to give it a tag. So I have to add a tag here in my list of tags. I want to add the name checkpoints, okay? And then for the wall, there's many of them. I want to add a tag so I can tell when a trigger goes off for the wall. So I'm going to call it wall and save it. Those are my two tags. And terrain, maybe I should call it track. No, well, I need checkpoints in that. So let me go back to checkpoints here. And then the checkpoints, I'm going to tag that as a checkpoints object. And then the wall, remember this is a prefab, okay? So this is the prefab right here. I'm going to select the prefab, open it, and I'm going to give it the tag wall, all right? So now, if I go back over here, all these walls should be tagged wall since I changed the prefab, and the checkpoints is using a bunch of prefabs for the wall. And the checkpoints should be checkpoint. Good. So now in my script for the car, for the AI car, I can get a reference to this checkpoints thing by using game object find with tag. And I give it the tag checkpoints. I only have one object in my scene that I tag checkpoints, which is this right here. So that'll give me that object. And I get the transform of it, okay? Because over here, this is the transform. And I set that to my AI checkpoints transform. And I'm going to say that the first point that my car is going to go to is point 0. And I think that's about right, because the first point that my car would go to then is this point right in front of my car. This one right here, what is it? If I select it, it is 0. There, you see? Selected it, and it is 0. Good, so I got the rigid body, and I got the checkpoints, and I'm pointing to my first checkpoint, 0. That's what I did in start. Now in fixed update, this is where all the movement happens for my car. So first thing I want to do is have my car start turning toward the checkpoint. So whichever way my car is facing, I want it to start rotating to face the checkpoint because the checkpoints are going to be guiding the car through the track. All right, so first I get the direction that the next checkpoint is in. And to get that, I subtract the checkpoint position from the position of my car. That's the direction that I want to go in. Now, how much do I have to turn? It would equal quaternion.look rotation at the direction I have to go in. So the look rotation of the direction I have to go in, that would be rotation steer. So this is where I want to turn to. This is looking at where I have to turn. Now I actually have to turn my car. So this, my AI car, transform.rotation equals, what rotation am I going to set it to? I'm going to set it to a rotation halfway between where I currently am rotated to where I need to rotate to. And how much do I turn it in that direction? What percentage? It's the turn speed right there, 0.01. So actually, I want this turning to happen the same on anybody's computer, so I do need to add a time.delta time times the turn speed. So now that that's that, if this equal to 1, then that means this rotation would happen in 1 step. So if this equals a 2, see, I don't know if I need this time delta time. Let's leave it out and see what happens first. Okay. All right, so this turns the car slowly toward the next checkpoint, and this moves the car. To move the car, I'm going to take the rigid body and I'm just going to add force. So I'm going to add relative force because in the scene, see, Z is always forward, but the car has its own forward, right? Where are you, car? Let me select the car. The car could have its own forward. The car could be pointing any of these directions, right? So even though the scene has its forward, the car's forward is this. When I want the car to move forward, I don't want it to move forward based on the world coordinate. I want it to move forward based on its own coordinate. So that's why I use add relative force. The forward direction of my car itself times the move speed, and the type of force that's being applied is a velocity change. So a velocity change, it doesn't matter how heavy my car is, all right? So that's going to move the car. This turns it, this moves it, and this is the trigger. So when I hit a wall, I have the car point at the next checkpoint. And this calculates the next checkpoint. I kind of parse the number from the name of the checkpoint, wall 17, 18, 20. This gets the number 20 or whatever, and then I say 20 plus 1, that's my next checkpoint. And if it goes past the last checkpoint, 30, then wrap around and go back to 0. Okay? So that's my script. Let's take a look and see how this works. Let's press play. And here we can see the car. It turns to face the checkpoints, and it's going through the things. Good. So it's kind of working. And now I did add a little thing to my car in the other demo so I could see like the path of the car took. So I'm going to select the car, and I'm going to simply add an effect here of a trail renderer. This is easy to do. And the width of 1 and the time of 5. Okay, so now it'll leave a little pink line behind itself as it's driving around, and we can actually see how its route is. See the little pink line behind it. See, so after it passes through the wall of a checkpoint, it goes ahead and starts pointing to the next checkpoint, but it doesn't snap. You see it turns slowly, and the force pushes it forward, so sometimes it skids around a corner. Okay, so that's how it looks from the top view. Let's see how it looks from the car view. All right, so to do that, I'm going to add one more. I'm going to add a script for the camera so the camera could follow the car. And the car, let me just double click on it. Let's focus on the car again. So here's the car, all right? And what we're gonna do is have the camera follow the car, but we want it to follow the car from a little bit behind the car. So we're gonna add a follow object. So I'm gonna create an empty child object there. I'm gonna name it follow pos. And I'll give it a little icon so we could see it, and I'll make it purple, a purple dot. Okay, so there's a purple dot to the car. And we'll say that the camera will it'll trail behind the car and look at the car, and it'll be a little bit higher than the car and look at the car as the car is going around the track, all right? So since this is a child object of the car, as the car turns and moves, that point turns and moves with it that the camera is behind it. Now for the camera, we're gonna have to tell the camera to follow it. So let's add a script called camera follow. That's a new script. Create. And then let's open up that script for the camera follow to edit it. All right, so what we got to put in here is something like this. There we go. We just need the Unity engine, and it's a model behavior script. So we're gonna have to pass the camera script what to follow. So I have to pass it the car object. And then I have a variable here to say how fast to follow it. And then this is the follow pos, that purple dot of the car. So when the script starts, it's going to get a pointer to the follow pos. So here's the car, and this function gets the child called follow pos of the car. Okay. Now, since the camera, we want it to be the last thing that updates as the game is rendering frame by frame. We want this to be the last thing after everything is drawn. Then we want to move the camera. So I'm using the late update function, okay, of model behavior. And first thing I do is I make the camera look at the car, okay, look at, and then I position the camera to be behind the car, to be at that follow position. All right, but I don't just say that the camera equals that follow position, because then the camera would move really jerky. So what I do is I tell the camera to lerp. That's like move in a position between where it is to where I want it to go. And this is how much it moves in that position. Okay, so from where the camera currently is to where I need it to be, which is the follow position of the car, and this is the percentage that it moves there. So every frame it gets closer and closer to the follow pos. If it's on the follow pos, then it kind of stays there. Now over here I had to get the follow pos object from the car, and I used a function called get transformed by name. So here's that function, the parent object and the name of the child. So this just loops through all the transforms, all the child of the car, and when I find one of the childs that's name equals the child name that was passed in, that's what I pass back. Okay, so that's what that is. So now the camera should be able to follow the car. Let's go back here and the script's being read. And here we go, and it wants the car that it wants to follow. So I'm going to give it my AI car. There you go. So now in the game view, we should have the camera following the car, and we should be able to see what the car sees. So here we go. I press play. And yeah, the camera's moving, but it's not moving behind. Ugh. So we got a problem. It's okay. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. We got start. I think it has the follow pos because it was following, but wait a minute. We do have an error here. Object not set to instance of an object. Let's double click on it and see where the line is. Right here is a trouble. Maybe follow pos never got set. Get child transformed by name. Follow pos. This is the name. Copy. And right here, did we name it that? Ooh, look, we didn't. It's spelled wrong. Paste. Follow pos. Okay, file save. And now let's see it. Now let's see it work. Okay. So here we go. And we still have errors. Lordy, lordy. Let's see what the error is now. Double click on it. It's still something here is object not set to reference. All right. What the heck? I thought I just spelled it better. It's still spelled wrong. All right. Follow, pause, enter. That's the name. File, save. Okay. Play. Go away, all you errors. Ah, there you go. And the car's following, and the only thing is we kind of can't see through those walls as it's going through the walls. So let's do the walls. Let's give them a transparent material so we can see through it. So I'm going to create a material. I'll call it transparent. And the material here, the color will be, I'll just make it like a gray. And here's the alpha. I'll just set it down low so the walls are see-through, but you could still tell they're there. So that's the transparency, but the render mode is opaque. All right, so all we have to do now also is set the fade. or transparent, either or something you could see through. But I'm going to use fade, and I'll turn these things off. And I can set GPU instancing. All right, so now if I make this material the material of the wall, so let's open the prefab for the wall. And in the renderer, we have materials, and here we could pick our trans material. You see how the walls became transparent and see-through? That's what we want. So now when I press play, there, I could tell where the walls are, but I could kind of see the road in front. And we got a car that is driving along the track, and you know, it has physics, it's skidding along, and sometimes it's doing this little bump like on the ground, but I think that's because you see this when it hits the walls on the side, it kind of does a bump. So that we could probably handle with something like smoothing the ground or making a better track. But this is an algorithm that you could use in this tutorial that we could do to follow a car. And let's see what we just had. We had 3 scripts. We had a checkpoint script that controlled the points for us and angled the walls. We had a camera follow script so that we could have the camera follow the car. All right. And then we had the AI car script. And the AI car script just went from checkpoint to checkpoint and slowly pointed the car to the checkpoint as the car moved forward. And there you go. We're going to use this. We're going to use this for our AI cars, and maybe we'll fine tune it up a little bit, but we're going to use this algorithm for the racing game. Hey, see you next time.